Yeah, we in here. Welcome back, everyone. I appreciate you coming back for episode 2 of the Intellectually Honest podcast. And today, I'll be honest with you, the topic is a little touchy. And the topic is slavery a choice? And I know you all know where I get that term from, right? It was made famous by Kanye West in his TMZ interview, but it's a legit question. I mean, it's something that we should ask. Is slavery a choice? And I'm going to explain the context a little bit. So he was on TMZ. This was doing, I forgot what year this was, but you guys can reference it. You know how to go find it. And he was talking to the group at TMZ, and he was mentioning that slaves back in the day, right? Them staying on the plantation was indeed a choice, whether it was a hard choice or not. And some made the choice not to stay, but he was referencing slavery in general. So I kind of adopted that term, right? And I use it in present tense. And I think that outrage comes from people relating to the term a little too much. What do I mean by that? Let me piece it together. So let's go back to 1880. Slaves back then, they figured the position they were in, that was it. They didn't foresee change. They didn't foresee any type of revolution coming aboard. Even though you had some revolts, some successful revolts, I should say, the masses were stuck in their ways. Let's just call a spade and be honest about it, right? And now let's fast forward to today. Is slavery a choice? And I will say yes. And this is why I would say yes. We are on a democratic plantation right now. You listening to me? Yes. No, not 10 years ago, not when your mama was in elementary school. No, we are on a democratic plantation. And why do I say that? So let's go to your Democratic nominee for President, Joe Biden. I'm sure you all heard him make the statement of, well, if you have a problem voting for Trump over voting for me, then you ain't black. I don't think a lot of y'all understand how profound that is. And I'm going to try to break it down within these 2 episodes, right? I'm going to present you some facts, mix in my opinion, and have you go do your own research and figure out how you feel about the situation. So let's go to the Democratic Party, right? The Democratic Party historically, for the life of the party, has been a party of oppression. We can go back to when they separated, right? It was one party, then they separated the Democrats and the Whigs and all that. Then it eventually became the Democrat and Republican. And I need to preface this by saying this. Whether you're on the left or the right, you know, the left wing and the right wing, that's where they get that term from. They get it from the chambers, right? The folks on the left believed in a certain thing and the folks on the right believe in a certain thing. The part they're leaving out is the body. The part they're leaving out is the middle. So I'm not trying to advocate for anyone to be a Republican. I'm not trying to advocate for anyone to be a Democrat. What I do want you to understand is those are the same people, bro. The Democrats and Republicans, the left wing and the right wing are on the same bird. And that bird is flying you directly to your oppression. But let's break down the Democratic Party. I'll leave that Republican side for another episode, another podcast. So the Democratic Party, there's a myth that goes around that says sometime during the 1960s, the Democrats made a shift, right? And they went from being these racist Dixiecrats to being these harborers of truth, being for the people. And it's probably one of the greatest marketing campaigns that ever happened, ever. And I'll break down why it's all a bunch of bullshit. So, 1964, we have the Civil Rights Act, right? 1965, we have the Voting Rights Act. So if you go back to 1964 and you look at the votes in the House and the Senate, which makes up Congress, of who was opposed, the most to that Civil Rights Act and who was opposed the least to that Civil Rights Act. We're just going to talk numbers. And I want you to make this make sense. The excuse that they have is the Democrats were so upset that their party voted for the change via the Civil Rights Act that they said, yo, I'm going to leave the party and I'm going to go Republican. Now let's make this make sense. I'm going to break down the numbers. So a majority of the people who rejected the Civil Rights Act, who rejected the Voting Rights Act, were Democrat. I'm going to let that sink in. A majority of the no votes, let me just say it like that, came from the Democratic Party. The Democrats, they rule Congress now. Definitely on the House side, definitely on the Senate side. They ruled it. And most Democrats voted yes, but the ones who opposed, when you break it down into just sheer numbers, there were more Democrats who said, no, we don't want these niggers to have no Civil Rights Act. We don't want these niggers to have any voting rights. No, we don't want that. And those were what they called Dixiecrat. Those were the Southern Democrats, right? So now they want you to believe that these Southern Democrats were so pissed off that their party said, hey, let's go ahead and push this forward, that they went to the less racist Republican side because the ratios aren't even close. I wish I can break it down like by percentage numbers, but the ratio wasn't close. Let's say you had, I'll just throw some numbers out there, 80 Democrats in total, we'll say in the House. I know it was way more than that, but I'm trying to do the simple math. Out of those 80, about 25 of them said, nah, we ain't fucking with this shit. Let's go to the Republican side. Let's say you had 20 Republicans. Out of those 20, only about 4 or 5 said, no, we don't want that. So why? Let's say you're a racist. Put yourself in the shoes of a racist. And some of you may be, a racist listening to this. I'm sure I got some coons on here. Shout out to y'all. But put y'all in that position, right? If you were mad at your party, would you go to the other party who was less racist than you? Can we make that make sense? If you were so pissed off at your own party that said, no, we're not going to stop these black folks from having voting rights. We're not going to stop these black folks from having civil rights. Would you then in turn say, oh, well, let me go over here to the other side where they are more awakened than you are, where they're more progressive than you are? It makes absolutely no common sense, and no one can make it make sense to me. And all this came from a interview. I believe it was one of Reagan people said that the Republicans it was a quote saying the Republicans made a conscious effort to solicit those Dixiecrats who were, pissed off about those civil rights. Well, let me give you some more quotes. And this is from Lyndon B. Johnson, who was president at the time, his first term, assassination of JFK. He stepped in. He signed a 64 and he signed a 65. So the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. But let's get into some of his quotes and let's see if the Democratic Party is as progressive as some of you may think. LBJ is on record calling the Civil Rights Act the nigger bill. That's very progressive, right? He's also on record telling his son, when he was electing Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court, he's also on record telling his son, if I'm going to put a black man on the Supreme Court, I'm going to make sure everybody knows that he's a nigger. I mean, these are quotes from LBJ. And even though this last one is unproven, I mean, after you heard the first two, you can kind of narrow it down, right? He's also supposedly, I'll say allegedly he made the statement that I will have these niggers voting Democrat for the next 200 years. So how do we get there? What was his sense of that? How can he have you black people listening right now who probably vote Democrat? Let's be honest. When it comes to black women in a presidential election, You guys are 98% voting Democrat. No matter what their policy is, no matter what they say they're going to do for you, no matter the history of them saying such things and not producing anything for you, you still vote Democrat. So let's tie that into the plantation, right? What is the most common theme of a slave? We ain't even got to go with black people. We can go with a dog. We can go with any type of pet. The most common theme of a slave is loyalty, no matter what. Many of you who have pets, you can go smack that dog in the mouth right now. 2 seconds later, it's still gonna want to cuddle with you. It may even look at you like, why you hit me? And then still want to cuddle under you. That's a slave. That is someone who has a dormant mentality of, well, things ain't gonna get better. This is my massa. I can't fight back against my massa. You see the common themes of all this stuff? So we have to, my goal of this whole episode 2 is to get you guys to understand that we are on a plantation. And I'm going to cut it short here because I have a real good conversation. That's why I have to break it up in 2 parts. I don't want the video to be too long for you guys, but we're having a real good conversation of the mentality of the current state of the Black thought. We also have a good conversation about solutions we can come towards to get out of that groupthink mentality. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my sisters on and we're going to get this conversation rolling. Tonight, I got 2 special guests with me, 2 phenomenal Black women who do phenomenal things, not only in the community through outreach, but also through activism. So please, everyone, a virtual round of applause for Kiera and Ray. Say what's up to the people, family.
Hello. How are y'all doing?
So yeah, tonight we're gonna chop it up, and I have some, some pre-questions that I'm gonna ask, but we're just gonna let this conversation take us, wherever we want to take us, and we'll bounce back and forth. I'll open up the first question to Ray and then let Kiera respond afterwards. So the first question of the night, Ray, do you agree with the statement that slavery is a choice?
I agree with the statement. I agree with Kanye's meaning as he meant it. Do you want me to elaborate?
Please.
So, thinking back of when that came out, I mean, if you look at the history of Kanye, he's always, been very elaborative. He's always been very dramatic. So anytime I hear Kanye say anything, I'm not going to take it completely literally. He's a lyricist.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't even make sense to take it literally. And I did feel like a lot of people did take it literally. But it is a metaphor. And I think the upward came from, a place of pain. If you do think of it literally, it's kind of like telling like someone who was in an abusive marriage, hey, you should just walk away.
Yeah.
But, I don't think he meant it that way. Granted, could he have done a better job at saying it? Anyone can always do a better job at explaining to whoever, what you mean. So I think, unfortunately, we've become so PC that we can't even use, hyperbole anymore. And so it's sort of, got a little crazy, but the general statement of what Kanye meant, is slavery a choice? Yeah, I agree with it.
And I agree with you. I really think people just kind of blew it out of proportion and in some way on purpose, because he was going through that whole, he even admits a mental break, and people were, in my opinion, looking for a reason to attack him, right? And right when he came with that, it was just, okay, let the wolves come in and let's do all the whole group thing. And, it wasn't effective as far as trying to demonize him, because for the most part, a lot of people were listening to it and said, hey, you know what? I understand, this is Kanye being Kanye, but he really does have a point, And Kiera, I want to ask for you, do you agree with that statement, or do you agree with parts of it? How do you feel about it?
So when it comes to the question, is slavery a choice? I'm now coming to the conclusion that I do actually agree that it is a choice. And the reason being is based on experience. Me going into being an entrepreneur, I really started to get more clarity as to why it is so much of a choice. From my advertising, marketing things that I do to get my clientele on, I start to realize that our community has such a fear when we make decisions. And I hate to use this word, but it's kind of like we're programmed when going into business for ourselves, because we're so used to the employee mindset. Mm-hmm. We're so stuck in, being comfortable with, having that 2-week check coming in, or having the benefits, or having the retirement funds, not realizing that there are ways that we can build ourselves. We can go into business. We can offer those benefit packages. We can offer certain things that these corporations are doing now. So when it comes to that slavery mindset of being stuck in, I got to work for someone to survive in this world, I just feel it's not, I don't believe that is it. I don't feel like that's all to life. So I look at it from a standpoint of just being an entrepreneur. I can do things, I can market, I can offer, packages, benefits to my team. I can do things that can bring them income, that can have, set them up for retirement. And I feel like once we get out of that fear of being stuck in, what was built, the foundation that was built before us, once we can get out of that mindset, I feel like we will go so far. We can be so innovative in our businesses. We can have more control than we've been given. And so when it just comes to slavery being a choice, I honestly believe that is the case. We've been programmed for so long to think that this is the natural, this is the normal. And it's not. There's more to life than having to work for someone else and helping them bring their vision forward. I feel like we should be comfortable enough to the visions and the dreams that we have. I feel we should just take a chance on ourselves and educate ourselves and really gain that knowledge so that we can go into it for ourselves and get out of that slavery mindset. It all starts with the mindset for me.
Lord have mercy, y'all preaching. Amen to both of you. For me, I was looking on the Twitterverse today, and they put it out. I think it was Kanye PR team or whatever. They put out that they are giving, I think, $2 million in donation to the 3 most current victims. Aubrey, Breonna, who is not, getting any recognition at all, and also George Floyd. And for me, when it comes to slavery as a choice, I really feel on all aspects, I'm talking about 360, that he was absolutely correct about that. Even the part that people were getting mad at, which was slaves back in the day, right? They chose to stay in the position that they stayed in. And if we're going to look at history, that's a fact. I mean, we can look at the Haitian Revolution, right? Those slaves said, fuck all that. I'm not going to sit in this situation. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to stay put. I'd rather die trying to get my freedom rather than sitting here and living in this captivity. So, and it's hard for us to kind of accept that, because we think, well, if all the slaves tried to escape, then you probably wouldn't be here because your ancestor would have been killed or whatnot. But such is life, in my opinion. Me coming from that military background as well, one thing that the oppressors do very well when they don't like the situation they're in, I mean, they fight, they die to get, whatever they want to get, whether it be land, whether it be, taking over other nations, whatever they want to get, they're willing to die for it. And I think we've been taught to be docile so much that we don't even understand. Like, that shit don't even compute with us. Like, we can't even think of, what do you mean breaking out of my comfort zone? Like you were saying, Kiara, and starting my own thing, being an entrepreneur, making my own money. And Ray,
can I say something on top of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Because she really did hit the nail on the head when she mentioned the word fear, right? Because in what you're kind of talking about now is the overall defensiveness of our community. Mm. And I think that's a symptom of it's either fight or flight. And it seems like we love to flight and to just kind of run away. I mean, it's just like that overall like symptom of just being afraid. And so when we try to have these convos, you see that backlash, just like Kanye did.
Mm-hmm. And Ray, I'm gonna put your business out there a little bit. So, Ray and I, we went to Full Sail together, right? And from day one, like, you know, we were always told, even every class we went to, like, yo, you have to start from the ground up. You know, you got to intern, you got to work for free, you got to go get coffee and snacks and all this other shit. From the jump, Ray is the only person that I've met in the music industry that said, fuck that. Nah, you're going to have to pay me for my talent. So Ray, speak on, I want you to speak on like, where did that mindset start with you? Where do you, how do you have the courage to, you know, speak out in a room full of people that's talking down and saying the same things, but you have that different voice? Where does that power come from?
Honestly, I think it comes from having to develop a thick skin from just being a Black woman and being raised to honestly always be quiet and being raised to accept what was given to you. Well, I started working when I was 15. Mind you, just to put this out there, my father was very, very hardworking man. I did grow up in the home with both of my parents, but my mom was sick. But yeah, I saw my father work. Whenever our car was broken down, he walked to work and he walked back. And when I say that's miles and miles, he walked miles and miles. I saw what work ethic looked like. But my dad got paid for his work. And so for me, it necessarily wasn't even about, you need to pay me for my talent, because at the point, I think talent is going to determine how much of something, how much you're, you know, how much value you have.
That's a word, yep.
But the basis of this country is based off of labor and making money and spending it. So why am I working for you but not making the money so that I can spend it?
Oh,
it doesn't make sense. There's a cycle that's broken there.
No, that's, oh my goodness, yeah. And,
whether I'm cleaning a toilet or pushing a fader for you, I deserve to be paid for that. And that's all I'm saying.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact. So that brings me to this, Kiara. So in your opinion, what is the greatest threat to Black society? Is that fear and, you know, being docile? Do you feel that's the greatest threat? I'm not trying to put that in your universe, but just tell me what your greatest, or what you feel the greatest threat to Black society is.
I mean, you actually took the words right out of my mouth, because honestly, that is the biggest threat that our community deal with. It's fear, because we're so comfortable with what's been given to us. We're so comfortable with what we've known the normal to be like, that I feel like we're at this point, I feel our community struggles with being uncomfortable. You know, you can't be at your truest success without having to be uncomfortable, because if you stay comfortable for so long, you grow stagnant. If you stay comfortable, you stunt your growth. If you stay comfortable, you're not, you kind of just getting to the point where you're just in a business and you're in a specific business for so many years, and you're like, why I see this person doing something similar to me, but they're growing at a whole different pace? Why do I do that? Why do I do that? Now, granted, we can't base our success off of someone else's success, but at the same sense, you can't come into something thinking that just being a teacher. You have to also learn to be a student as well. You have to also learn to do your research in your industry. It may be something that you're passionate about. It may be something that you've done for a certain amount of time, but there's always room to grow. There's always room to learn. There's so many other things out there that are now giving us the advantage to really elevate in what it is that we're doing. And like Ray was saying, you have to know your worth. You have to know your worth. Someone can't come in and tell you what your worth is. Like, there's just like someone, me doing, and I've been in the financial industry for 10 years now. And that's like somebody trying to come in and tell me how to do my job. I don't go into your job to tell you how to do your job.
Facts.
So why would you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel like with fear is one of the biggest failures that we deal with as a community. Like, that is one of the biggest failures. There's so many things that we can do to, educate ourselves. Everybody's so stuck in this, technology has advanced so much that now everybody is depending on technology for knowledge. And there was more to knowledge before technology. There was books, there were laws, there were things that people they fail to really take advantage on and understand. You move to a whole new city and the first thing you do is, okay, I want to go out to this club, or I want to go out to this place, or I want to be seen. But you don't necessarily take the time to know your laws, know your surroundings, know where you're at, understand that. Like, get education. Stop going to social media to educate you.
Right.
I feel when we let go of that and really empower and really just get that knowledge and gain that knowledge and understanding that we deserve, I feel we will advance so much better. We will really see our fullest potentials. We will really be able to innovate different things than what has been seen on a day-to-day basis because we're in the same industry as someone else, if that makes sense.
It makes a whole bunch of sense, yes ma'am. So you feel that threat is fear. That's the greatest threat.
Absolutely. Being stuck in the comfortable zone.
Bad. Ray, what say you? What do you think is the biggest threat to Black society right now?
I don't think I'm really far off from fear. I thought it was complacency, which is not really far off from fear. Mm-hmm. Like she said, we are very comfortable. And I think what it is we were always taught to be comfortable with what we're given. And I think it's sort of like breadcrumbing the Black community. We've been breadcrumbed our entire lives. As soon as we make any type of noise, they hand us a little bit just to shut us up. Mm-hmm. And then that stalls us. And just like, Kira mentioned, she said, we could be doing so much more than with this technology and be reading and know where your surroundings are. And that was so important. I've mentioned this before. I was like, Black people can tell you where all the clubs are, but ask them where City Hall is. And we don't have a problem. Ask them where the courthouse is. And they actually might know where that one is, but ask where City Hall is, where you actually go and talk to your leaders so that we can actually establish change.
Right. Because, listen, people, every city council, most governments are ran off of the mayoral council system, right? Where you have the mayor that sits at the top. You got the city council members are really the ones that's making the decisions, and they just get the blessing with the mayor. So every week in every city, it's law. They have to have town halls where you come in. They have to present, this business say they want this permit to do this. They want this license to do that. And those businesses, they have to go in front of the council, get the blessing in order for them to do business. So if you don't like that, your neighborhood has 55 liquor stores in it, you should have been in there about 10 years ago, when they was blessing off on those 55 liquor stores and giving those city council members the rebuttal like, we already got a ABC out here, you know what I'm saying? We don't need 55 other ones out here. No, we already have a couple of wig shops out here. And matter of fact, these wig shops ain't employing none of our people. They taking our money.
I just mentioned that. I said, what were your leaders doing when all these non-Black people were coming into our city?
Yeah. Right. And you know what? I'll say this just to piggyback off of what you're saying, right? What do they say? The saying that they say is, if you want to hide something from a Black person, put it in a book. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing about that is, one, it can be very painful to hear that, but two, the other painful part about it is that it's true. Mm-hmm. That's just like any contract. Like, I deal with this all the time when I'm signing my clients up. Like, I go through everything, I discuss everything, but then of course I always leave something out in particular just to see if they'll go read it just on their own, just to see if they'll really read the guideline. Like, a lot of people will look through some type of application, they'll see the main basic information, contact information, payment information, but then there's a fine print. And I tell them, in my business, we don't put them under contract. However, I still want to see who's going to read it, who's going to look into that, see that for themselves, or are they just going to put the information in and then ask me the questions that were already listed in the contract? Like, that's one of the biggest things that I feel like we need to work on as a community. Like, I really feel like that, because it's so much history that is unspoken. There's so much history, and it was amazing because I was listening to the other podcast that you were talking about, John, and it was when you were speaking about Rosa Parks being the fourth, like literally being the front line of, the civil rights movement when she didn't want to give up her seat, not realizing there was somebody that came before her with this.
Plenty of.
But because she was young and because of what they wanted, it was just the image that they were wanting to portray with the civil rights movement. They decided not to really put Claudette Colvin in the front field. They just, she got pregnant. They wanted to make sure that the message was not missed. And so it baffles me just to take it back to what I was saying, it just baffles me that they say, if you ever want to hide something from a Black person, put it in a book. We got to do something about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.